At one time, we too were foolish, disobedient, deceived, and enslaved by all kinds of passions and pleasures. We lived in malice and envy, being hated and hating on one another. But when the kindness and love of God, our Saviour, appeared, he saved us, not because of righteous things we had done, but because of his mercy. Merry Christmas, guys.
What a friendly way to start the podcast there.
Yeah. Talk about Jesus and religion. It's Christmas.
Yeah, I quite liked it. You sounded a bit like you were doing a trailer for something.
Yeah, I was
like, coming soon.
Yeah, Jesus the second.
The second coming.
Die harder.
Waiting a while for his second coming, haven't we?
Yeah, plenty of time now. Any day now, they're saying. Any day now he's going to be popping back up. Could be this Christmas.
Good morning, good people. This is our philosophy podcast, and today's episode is specifically Christmassy.
Hooray! Merry Christmas.
We're going to be talking about Christmas and religion and stuff. We'll probably tangent from there, I reckon.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
This is easily our least prepared, and we're pretty poorly prepared for the rest.
I think the last one was worse, to be honest. This is going to be a new, fresh podcast, guys. Energy, Christmas spirit, all of these kind of things. It's going to be wonderful. Stay tuned, please. We need listeners. Thank you.
What should we talk about first? Faith? Purpose of religion?
I think we should talk about faith.
Yeah.
I think
Faith.
someone should get the actual dictionary definition of faith up.
I will. Let's have a look.
Because I take this subject very seriously.
Oh, yeah?
I'm very anti-religion.
Yeah.
And I know I used to argue about this stuff a lot. I used to be quite knowledgeable.
Faith. Noun. Strong belief in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual conviction rather than proof.
I prefer the first one, mate. The first definition.
Yeah, but that's not really applicable. That's a different
Complete
definition.
trust or confidence in someone or something. That would suggest that's unfounded. It's unfounded.
As opposed to the second one that says rather than proof.
Alright, maybe. Maybe I didn't listen to you.
You're just like thinking in your head, I'm going to tell him he's wrong.
I'm just going to
And you
argue
weren't
with him
listening to what I was
anyway.
saying. So we thought we'd talk about religion a little bit today, seeing as it's the
Christmas.
celebration of Jesus' resurrection. It's his resurrection, isn't it? Christmas. No, it's his birth.
It's his birth. Oh my god.
Yeah, there was some failings in my RE upbringing.
I got an F in RE, man. Fuck you. You're just thick.
I don't think I even got an F. I don't know what I got. I did like a BTEC. Not BTEC. What was the one before BTEC the little kids did? It was like a certificate in RE and PSHE. So
What?
yeah, clearly I'm very qualified to be talking about this. Maybe it's a southern
Tell you
thing.
what, mate. You're lucky you got a pretty face. Tell me.
Where do we think faith comes from then?
Faith. Faith is a tricky one. I can. Faith being a belief based on spiritual conviction rather than truth.
Yeah, I think faith is the easy answer.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier than thinking critically. You
Where,
know?
where do people get their faith from? Like, some people probably get faith from religious experience.
Yeah.
Other people
Some do.
probably just get their faith from
Well,
the church.
Yeah.
If it's from religious experience, it isn't faith anymore. Because now, to you, it's not unfounded. I would suggest that people who seek religious experiences,
Yeah.
according to the Bible, will not be favored by God. Because
Hmm.
God specifically puts a heavy price on faith. They no longer have faith because they have proof.
Yeah.
Or they believe they have proof.
It's a tricky one. I mean, the thing is, I think as time has gone along, two things have happened to prove. First, it's become a lot more accessible with empiricism and, the scientific revolution and all of these kind of things.
But what's empiricism?
Empiricism is that's a hard one. It's a system of analysis of the world based purely on reason and fact and logic.
Yeah.
Obviously, back when a lot of these religions were founded, specifically Christianity, there was none of that. The sun would come up, we wouldn't know why. Rain would fall from the sky, we wouldn't know why. Our crops would die sometimes, and we wouldn't know why.
God did it.
God did it. It's an easy answer. Faith, it would seem like to me, as an empiricist, it's like a cop-out answer, I suppose.
Yeah.
People don't feel comfortable feeling like they don't know what's occurring around them. And to create a reasonably logical argument for it, saying, well, God done it, is better than just saying it happens. And if that's the closest you have to proof, you have to push that proof in order to make yourself feel knowledgeable and aware, and you just call it faith to justify it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I specifically dislike faith. I'm not sure if you have an opinion based on your explanation then, but I specifically dislike faith because I believe knowledge or knowing something or the human brain, whatever, is definitely split into two categories.
Mm-hmm.
We have critical thought and we have ignorance. Now, I would say faith is an aspect of ignorance. Just following something blindly.
Yeah.
Just accepting something to be true. For instance, children are ignorant. I mean, it's a fact. When you're in primary school, everything you're taught, you accept it to be true.
Yeah.
And then I remember in English class going into high school, and they go, right, well, this is what they taught you in primary school. This is wrong. This is actually what you're supposed to do, and this is actually what it means and stuff.
It's also very interesting, just to interrupt you briefly, that you get that sense of blind acceptance when there's a position, when there is a position of authority. As a child,
Definitely,
the teachers
yeah.
are positions of authority, and the way the doctrines work, especially with God, is he becomes this paternalistic, almighty authority, which further justifies why you can accept his teachings without any justification.
Well, I think it's specifically important to separate the Abrahamic religions, so one almighty God, separate that from gods that have pantheons, religions that have pantheons of gods. Because I think religions and pantheons of gods, their deities are less an authoritative figure, but more of a role model. For instance, we try doing that in his Abrahamic faiths with prophets and stuff. You know, the prophet Muhammad, or Jesus, depending on whether or not you believe him to be a prophet or the son of God or whatever. They are made to be more role models rather than deities themselves. So I'd argue that. Actually, I don't know what my point was.
We were talking about authority.
Yeah. So deities in these other pantheonic religions. Rather than having these prophets, they have these deities altogether. For instance, we have Ra, Anubis, Horus. I don't know, fucking Ares, fucking
Mars, and
Poseidon. With all these pantheons, and all these gods represent something. They represent a positive character, but their character is very much human. They have negative traits. They enjoy breeding with lots of people, or they enjoy feasting and drinking too much, or fighting, and it's they. I think they're role models because you can identify with them more. And they aren't this authoritative figure that you are supposed to be told that controls you.
Do you not think there's like an advantage to having like faith in God though, especially in the olden times when you're like literally living in your own shit all the time? You've got a loaf of bread between you, but at least you've got some faith in God and some faith that when it all goes to shit and you die, there's something's going to come from it, or at least somebody out there loves you, whether it's God or Jesus or anyone like that. And it also gives you a kind of sense of unity amongst everyone else. I mean, it's definitely advantageous as well as like installing faith to keep people together and to keep them controlled. But I think there's just as much benefit from people believing in a God, and they still have that benefits now as well. A lot of people, when they go to prison and they fall on hard times, they turn to faith and stuff, and you can draw from it, and you can draw lessons from it as well. And I still think we can do it now.
I definitely believe in that. I think you're definitely right there. They are extremely useful when looking for something to help support you when people fail to support you, or looking for something to comfort you when nothing else can comfort you. But I'd say that a pantheonic faith, I can't remember the actual term, but a faith with lots of gods, is far better at it than a faith with a single God. I think that it's a shame, because obviously I don't believe any to be true, so it's quite easy for me to say. But I think it's a shame that we have these Abrahamic faiths and other faiths with a single God, with a single creator.
I think there's a particularly good excuse for why the pantheonic religions or traditions, or whatever you'd call them, have died out, and have more or less, apart from a few exceptions in sort of Eastern Asia and India.
Well, here they died out because of Christianity. Specifically, they crusaded a lot.
But you touched on a really interesting point there, Tom, about religion as a means for control. And I think it was Karl Marx who said that religion is being used as the opiates for the masses. So it's there's a theory, and I'm not sure how convinced about it. It does seem a little bit tinfoil hatty to me.
I think saying it's called saying it was Karl Marx makes me just.
Well, listen to my argument. Let's listen to his argument first. In that, especially the Abrahamic religions and why they've been so widely propagated by the people in power, is because they serve as a means of controlling the proletariat. So, the Abrahamic religions, they say things like living in excess, or living boldly, or living above other people is wrong, and that living in a simplistic life without very much suffering is important, blind faith, obedience is very important, and by convincing your population that to actually be in a power position, the people at the top, the hierarchy, the monarchy, for example, they're sinners, they're wrong, we don't want to be in that position. It forces them and convinces them to be content in a position of subservience and control, and therefore prevents uprising.
I think you're definitely right there. But I do think that pantheonic religions also do this.
Really?
Which is an aspect of perhaps why they're not so good, because they obviously they're role models, they're gods and whatever.
Yeah.
They are role models and they're not authoritative figures. But they also teach the same obedience, which, I mean, you can argue is a good or bad thing. But I would argue in their favour, saying that this obedience in a pantheonic religion would be a good thing, because it teaches it, rather than saying be happy where you are, because when you die, afterlife,
that's when your reward is. Yeah.
You know, and this rich person, he's going. In the Bible, it says all rich men go to hell.
Yeah.
There is no factors.
It's like the camel through an eye of a needle thing, isn't it?
If you have lots of money, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Fact. You know, there's no exceptions to that. So they do also they are also a victim of this authoritative sort of control. But I favour them because their gods aren't the ones controlling you.
Yeah.
It's the people preaching these gods.
Mm. So that touches on a little subtopic I think we wanted to talk about. In that,
before we move on, do you have anything else to say, Thomas?
I did. Do you not think that I can't remember what I was going to say now. Never mind. Carry on. If I remember, I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
Before we do carry on, in order to get sort of a sense of this discussion, I think we all need to express what we think of.
Yeah, this is what I was about to
just
say.
our opinions of what faith, spirituality, and religion, and what kind of religions we like and stuff like that.
Okay, so would you like to start off with that, Will?
Well, I'm a fan of pantheonic religions.
Yeah.
And I think pantheonic religions, I personally think, obviously I don't know the dictionary definition, but I think they're better described as faith, faiths, not faith, but faiths, and spirituality, rather than religion.
But I'm wondering what you mean when you say you favour them. In the sense that you think they're more beneficial, they're more credible, they're more likely.
I just think they're cooler.
They do. They definitely have the detriments, and they are definitely cool.
They are cooler.
Because, like I said, their gods have a good side and a bad side.
Yeah, they're humanistic.
Rather than ours, who is an asshole in the old times, and all of a sudden he's all loving and shit.
Yeah.
You know?
That was his angsty preteen phase.
That's what I was going to quickly bring up. Do you think that it was like the upper people that twisted religion and turned it into something bad? Or do you think that it was more that they actually took religion and made it bad in the first place and then put it down?
I think it rises out of a necessity, you know, to answer questions and to live in, to be able to receive comfort from this idea.
Yeah.
But pantheonic religions, I think they're less susceptible to being twisted by authority figures.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a single God, it's very easy to say to everyone, if all your preachers represent the same God, they all say, this God tells you it's okay to be poor, you shouldn't want to be rich.
Yeah. It's a clearer message you can create with one.
Whereas if you ancient Rome and ancient Greece are really nice examples of this. If you're well off and you have a bust of, I don't know, Bacchus, who I believe is the god of feasting,
hospitality.
Yeah, if you have a bust of him in your home and you look at him, you go, what does he represent? He represents living in comfort, but also giving this comfort to loved ones.
Yeah,
you know, spreading this happiness. And so if a preacher tells you, don't have comfort, comfort is a sin, comfort will send you to hell. Look at all these other poor people.
Yeah,
you can go to yourself, well, actually, Bacchus wants me to share it anyway.
Yeah.
Why would I go to hell for this?
You can kind of pick and choose a pantheon.
You can't be
based on-
brainwashed.
Yeah.
Propaganda is more difficult when there's lots of different gods.
Yeah. So how about you, Tom? What's your sort of general sense on spirituality and faith?
First of all, I was reading about what I was listening to a Terence McKenna lecture the other day, and he was briefly going over hermeticism, I think it is, and that's about being able to rise yourself up to the level of God, and the only way you can have a relationship with God is through rising yourself up through things like study and bettering yourself as a person.
So you're worthy.
To put yourself, and then you put yourself onto a God's level, and then you can have communication and relationship with God. I like that because it allows people to want to progress themselves and chase something.
I really fucking like that. I really like that because I imagine, like, obviously I'm gonna imagine this in the cult. No offense.
Yeah.
But I imagine this in the cult, like you should, this leader saying, "I am a god. You can be gods too." You have to work in. We assume these positive factors. You have to add these characteristics to yourself to become a god, so you can communicate with God like I do. And they eventually rise to the title of God, and then he can say, "Why do you need a god? Why do you need to talk to God? Look at you. You're better than everyone else. You can make people's lives better. You don't need a god now."
It's a state of enlightenment, isn't it? It's the same
exactly. Like you get to a point where it's like,
well,
you don't need a god anymore, mate. Look at you. Look at the happiness you have. Look at the happiness you can bring to others. Why do you need a god?
So that to me is kind of a scary idea because you can then mold that in any way based on how you define God's properties.
Can we?
It sounds
Can we search a definition of God?
Yeah, of course. It sounds like
God, you love your definitions.
Definitions are very important. This is a very broad argument. It's been happening a long, long time.
It sounds to me like is it Terence McKenna you said?
Yeah, he was just talking about hermeticism. He's quite well read.
Yeah.
He does a lecture on it. Hermeticism.
All right.
But then I mean, what's to say you can't then say that the god you're aspiring to is like a warmongering,
like
hateful god
out of Skyrim?
Yeah, and how to ascend to his position is to become the most bloodthirsty and most powerful thing.
I guess that's possible. I don't know enough about hermeticism to extend upon it. It was just a sort of a little reading.
That's a negative factor of cults.
Well, let's just quickly
No offense.
Let's just quickly bring it back and finish this little thing we're going on. So my opinion of
was that your opinion done, mate?
Well, that's faith. I've got spirituality as well.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, everybody.
Well, for me, spirituality is about having like a connection with the universe.
Yeah.
And you get it through loads of different ways, whether you get it through a religion or whether you get it with being scientific. So that even if they think, we come from the Big Bang and it's, we're literally made of stardust. And if you want to believe that after we've lived your life and we just turn back into carbon atoms and dissolve down, and then you think
Cloud
and
of consciousness.
or I'll come to that, and whether that scientific view inspires you to live your life the way you do, or whether believing in a god inspires you to live the life the way you do, or whether it's just like a cloud of consciousness, or whether something else spawned from the Big Bang that we can't see or detect at the moment, but it might be there, and that's what created us. It can mean so many things, but for me, spirituality is about some sort of relationship with the universe.
So you think spirituality does include faith as well?
Yeah. Well, I guess it would be.
I don't think it necessarily has to, does it?
I don't think it has to.
I think by definition
in some
it has
things, but in other things it doesn't, because like believing in the universe, like I say, with the scientific term, you can just believe that we come from the stars, which we do. It was all blown up, and then
you can use this as philosophy to live your life.
Yeah, and then you just think once I'm dead, it's over with. So I'm going to be a go-getter. Yeah, it's kind of stoic, but that's what atheists believe now, that they're just, when they're gone, they're gone. There's nothing else. But it's still a way of, we're still part of the universe. You can't ever escape that, and it's whatever makes you a
add that to the list. Let's talk about atheists later.
Okay.
Because there's quite a lot of good ones and quite a lot of bad ones.
Bad atheists.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it for me, and for like spirituality and faith. What do you think, Matthew?
I kind of lean towards the atheist position. More or less, I am atheist in that I think there are very reasonable and simple explanations based on things like societal pressure and the way that the human psychology works, that would explain why these stories and why we have faith and their emergence. And I can't remember who it was, but generally the most simple explanation is going to be the most valid one.
Yeah.
I think
Occam's
it's more...
razor.
Pardon?
Occam's razor?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you want to say that louder for the audience, mate?
Occam's razor. I don't know if I said that correctly.
That's some AMSR shit right there, mate.
Yeah, man, that'll get you all to bed. What was I saying? Yeah, so it seems to me more likely that human beings are predisposed to search for authority. We need a quest for knowledge. We don't like feeling in the dark. We like creating stories and being creative. And that all of these things come together to form a very general idea of religion that you find all over the world, as opposed to there being invisible, omnibenevolent, all-powerful beings that created the universe, that somehow existed before the universe was created, outside of the universe, and then influence our lives but choose to remain hidden. It seems very complicated, unnecessarily complicated, whereas simple explanations like that seem to do a much better job for me. So I really think religion is a byproduct of humans, as opposed to humans being a byproduct of religion.
I definitely give you that, yeah. Are you done? I just wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to move on to spirituality in a minute.
This is sort of going on to your view on spirituality, I guess, which I'm not aware of, so I can't possibly say that. But my view on spirituality, I think really gets to that part, is basically it's faith without religion. I think it's important to separate spirituality and religion. I mean, for instance, spirituality, the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul as opposed to material physical things. Now, I think that's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Looking at who we are, what our souls are, but as well looking at these gods and having this belief in gods and this belief in the supernatural and the paranormal and whatever, as opposed to religion, which institutionalizes these beliefs and starts sending biased messages with agendas. I mean, we can easily search up, you can search up for an hours on end of shitty things in the Bible and shitty things in the Quran, horrible things that they get away with because they're a religion. Like, oh yeah, we can have this. This is hate speech, by the way. Like, having this shit in the Bible, like, oh yeah, you should stone women, you should stone gays, hang witches. What's your definition of a witch? A woman who, is prideful. A woman who is prideful, Like, I think it's very interesting, and it's probably a big factor why I don't like these religions with one deity, because they can put all this shit in a book, say it's holy, and get away with it.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone was to write the Bible in the 21st century England, they would be locked up for hate speech, hardcore hate speech.
Yeah. It's also interesting, it's a bit of a tangent, but the King James's Bible, a version of the Bible edited and rewritten by the king.
Is that a thing?
That is a thing.
Oh,
that's what the
brilliant.
King James's Bible is.
That's that top down.
Isn't that just ridiculous?
I haven't read it.
Well, I think
it's a ridiculous idea.
The fact that you'd let someone in a position of power with a clear agenda for control to edit and modify. Well, I suppose you didn't really have a choice because he was the king. But then to accept those doctrines to inform your religious beliefs for years and years to come is absolutely
chosen by God, though, isn't he?
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah.
I love that, by the way. Like, we have all these ancient religions, all these ancient cults, and these ancient tribes, where their leader is a representative god. For instance, in ancient Egypt, the leader is a representative god, and we in England, our king one day went, "Do you know what? Catholicism isn't good enough for me. I want to make up my own. I'm a representative god now."
Yeah,
boom.
And what, son?
It's like
a legend.
Today, the leader of the royal family is automatically also the leader of the Church of England, and I think that's mental. Like, I do think the royal family, like, I mean, I've probably talked to you guys before, I'm a fan of dictatorships and stuff.
Yeah, ludicrous.
Yeah, that's fair. But I believe that the royal family should take power, and they can at any point. Problem is, people may or may not like that.
They won't.
They won't, probably won't. But I mean, just this is a perfect example of the royal family's sort of obedience to the people.
Yeah.
Like their relations with the people, because they are the leader of the church.
Yeah.
They are the leader of the Church of England, which arguably isn't as big as it used to be, but I still think it's the leading religion in England. It is the religion of the UK.
I can imagine that. I'm not sure if that's true, but probably.
I mean, it's either specifically the Church of England
Catholicism.
or Catholicism, or Islam. It's one of those three.
Islam.
Yeah,
Protestantism.
there's a
probably
lot. There's
comes first.
a lot of Muslims in the UK.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, I think Islam is. I think having lots of Muslims around is a nice thing.
Well, I like the percentages, like atheists.
Oh, yeah.
Check
Check
Oh,
right here.
that is an
That'll be-
interesting idea.
yeah.
Well, we can. I'll look that up and we can tangent to that later.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What's your opinion on spirituality?
Sorry, I just need to type demographics. So yeah, faith. I think faith is obviously. I shouldn't say obviously. It's necessary in day-to-day life. Like I said before, it was needed a lot more because we had a lot less answers. We still need it now in the sense that we trust empirical means, we trust the scientific method, but based on what? Like, you just have to assume that it's correct. If I add 2 + 2 is going to equal 4 every single time, you just have to believe it. You have to
Minus
believe.
1 is 3.
They had,
Quick maths.
They had faith in the Higgs boson for a while, didn't they?
Yeah.
Before they proved that.
So there's always going to be an element of necessity of it, because otherwise we'd just live in turmoil and doubt for the rest of our lives. But in terms, it's like what I said before with Occam's razor. Faith, I feel, is necessary to bridge that final gap, to accept the most likely, most practical, most rational answer. Because there's always going to be a counter argument. You can't even justify the world around you exists, let alone the scientific method is accurate.
Well, do you not think it's fair to say God as that final answer? It's God.
No, I don't. I think it's too convoluted. It's too convoluted, and like I say, there are much better explanations for why there's such a widespread God phenomenon, as opposed to there actually being a God. It just seems very far-fetched.
So you said earlier you were an atheist. Is anyone here religious? Are you religious?
Not really, no. I like...
You like some opinions.
Apologies for the bias
yeah, I like
standpoint.
essence of like religions, and I think they're beneficial, and I like to think there's something more to the world. I like the feeling that humans are sort of connected on another level with each other.
Yeah.
And we don't quite understand what that level is yet. I think there's examples of like when like new technologies and new inventions pop up, they always seem to pop up like around the world, and then they'll pop up soon after somewhere else around the world. Even when like communication was lacked, it's weird how we'd all like ideas would always spring together in different places at the same time. It's kind of weird how we come about with these things.
Yeah.
I wish I had some examples of that.
I do know what you're talking about. I remember it being mentioned in the Assassin's Creed series.
Oh, yeah.
That's a credible source there, everybody.
Yeah, it's a very good.
No,
source.
but yeah, in ancient societies, we'll have this technology spring up here, but on the opposite side of the world, it also springs up at around 100 years before or after. It's like,
Yeah.
well, relatively, this is very close, and they don't have any communication with each other.
I think there's closer examples than that, to be honest.
But unfortunately, we also have examples. We still have isolated tribes in the Amazon.
Yeah, we haven't done any of that.
who still eat shit for breakfast. So
Yeah.
that was bigoted. That may or may not be true.
Jesus. Okay, and in terms of, just to finally get off of this topic, spirituality. I like your definition of it, Tom. I mean, the jury's still out in terms of what I think about spirituality. I mean, it's easy to say that you shouldn't have any sort of belief that you can't fully justify. But then, like I said earlier, we just have to have an element of faith in everything we believe. And there are definitely very unusual things about human nature that spirituality would be able to explain. Like, hell, we don't even fully understand our own consciousness yet, and what it is that makes us conscious, what it is that makes us aware of the universe. The fact that something can blindly create vision, like a universe can, through purely physical steps, create something like us, with the ability we do to observe it, is very, very absurd. It's very unusual. And again, the things you described earlier, the connection we have with other people, human development, these kind of things are all very difficult to explain. So I'm not sure how I feel about spirituality. I think if there is a strong spiritual standpoint, it's going to be away from things like gods and authority figures, and it's going to be very humanistic, most likely. But honestly, I've got no idea, to be honest.
Well, a big thing why I like spirituality is because spirituality is the lowest, is slightly lower, a step before religion. So spirituality doesn't have power. Spirituality doesn't have political power.
Yeah.
It doesn't have power in society. It's someone believing in something. You know, you can argue it's a state of ignorance or it's a state of mental illness or whatever, but it's not a problem until it's religion. Because the religion has power. The religion is exempt from rules.
Yeah.
The religion itself is this biased, agendaed, you know, I would argue monstrosity.
Yeah.
But faith, I think, is beautiful. I mean, like,
on an individual level.
Paganism is, I mean, if you check this demographic now, I'm pretty sure paganism as a title will probably be a very big thing. Paganism's every decade is becoming more and more popular in England and the UK. And I think that's beautiful because all these different opinions and all these different faiths and beliefs. And so a lot of them sound fucking insane, in my opinion. You know, a lot of people sound off their tits. But it's still really interesting. And, you know, you have ancient pagan religions such as, I can't remember what the European one, but I mean, like, Norse mythology, that's pagan. We have Celtic mythology, which is pagan. Have you ever researched Celtic mythology?
No.
It's very difficult because they don't write shit down, obviously. They're quite thick.
Yeah.
But really interesting stuff. Norse mythology is extremely interesting. I mean, you guys already know I'm a big fan of Norse mythology. But I think mythology and theology as a part of faith and faith itself, very, very beautiful things.
Yeah.
Some of the stories are really beneficial as well. I just think religion, I don't think it's all bad. I just think it needs to evolve. I think you're right when you say we've got like these aspects that have come from the top down and it's twisted what should be a kind of beautiful thing that helps people get through hard times into forms of control, and they've twisted the stories and it's now this big kind of mess. And I think we need to extract the good from it. We need to take what we know about science and develop into things like spirituality and go on from religion onto there.
Yeah.
So you're saying we need critical thought?
Yeah, we just need to involve everything and develop ourselves.
So that segues really interesting, and something I wanted to talk about and hear your opinions on is that it sounds to me like we're all more or less in agreement that the cause or the source of religion isn't God. It isn't. Is that a safe claim to make?
Yeah, I assume it's to answer. It's comfort.
So I'm wondering, what do we think? What is the purpose of religion now, and especially in this modern age? Yeah, in this modern age, for keeping it, and why? What should it become? What should that transformation you were talking about, Tom, look like?
It's difficult to say what benefit religion has now. I guess it's the same as it was for people before. It helps you get through things like hard times. It helps you take lessons and like reflect on yourself. But apart from that, that's why I really struggle with some of the. I struggle with people believing in like the old forms of religion and like really taking the stories to heart and turning like away science and stuff like that.
I can't remember the term for that, but I just call it non-active and active. For instance, an active Christian would be someone who goes around shouting negative things about homosexuals or trans people or foreign people or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I would call that active Christianity, for instance. I would argue that in itself, an active Muslim would be a radicalist, as well as an active Christianity would be a Christian would actually be a radicalist. You know, the KKK are ISIS. They are Christians. They are Muslims. They are active. You know?
I think literal would be a better term.
Yeah,
I think
literal.
be like an active.
Well,
Christian.
I say active and non-active specifically because the Bible and the Quran teaches horrific things, and I think if you get to a point where you pick and choose these stories, because it was used, it wasn't meant to be used as, I don't assume, but it was used as a way to control the masses, and it's still used in other countries, especially not ours, but in other countries, as a way to control the masses, make them believe in something, so you can do what you want and they do what you want. So I do believe that anyone who is an active Christian or active Muslim, by definition, because of their holy book, would be radicalist. So anyone who isn't a radicalist, who belongs to these religions, I would say is a non-active one, because they're picking and choosing.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure it's so much like bad teachings. I think there's a lot of bad interpretations that come from it as well. And I wish I knew more. I wish I paid attention more in Jordan Peterson's lectures that he does on the Bible.
Yeah.
Because he interprets it in a really new and brilliant way. I need to brush up on it and take some notes and then rehash it in a podcast sometime.
Yeah.
And then we can do a little segment on it because he has some fascinating interpretations on stories that have been interpreted the wrong way. And he approaches it really, really well. And I think he has a good point that we have wrongly interpreted it. Either that or, like we say, it's been made to interpret that way from the people in the top to try and control us. But whether it should just be thrown out the window, I'm not too sure.
I think a problem there is he's extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
And by definition, he is extremely intelligent because everyone else isn't. And so I think...
Just got to have faith that he's right then.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if he's saying, well, this is a way you can interpret it, and you go, wow, that's really cool. That's actually, I fancy that.
Yeah.
Most people don't, though. That's why he's intelligent, because he can do these things. Most people don't do those things, and so I can't see how that could be a reason to validate, or to validate or throw away an anti-religious argument.
So you think because people are idiots and they read something and take it literally?
We're lucky in the West, in North East, South West. Yeah, in Western Europe, in the UK, in Northern Europe, and in most of America, because we are not religious anymore. A lot of us are not religious at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of us...
Well, I'm reading right now, according to The Guardian, in an article posted 2017, 53% of all adults now in the UK describe themselves as having no religious affiliation, which is an increase from 2015.
I know it was over 50% in the UK.
Yeah.
I think it's much lower in America. I think it's like 20
stuff.
or 15 or something. But again, their Christianity, most of them are non-active Christians, and I would say most of the people who didn't identify as atheist here would be non-active.
Yeah, I agree.
People.
I don't like this non-active thing. I don't see why it can't be that they're just interpreting the Bible correctly. I don't think we've actually got many poor interpreters.
See, it's not about interpretation. It's just about ignoring parts. That's what they do.
I don't think it is. It's about taking a part and reading it for the lesson that it's supposed to invoke, and not the literal interpretation.
Well,
of it.
what's the lesson behind stoning a gay man?
I don't know. I'd have to read the verse. It's you just picking bits, and this is why I hate this without being prepared.
What's the lesson? I know it's sort of a bully tactic, I guess. But what's the lesson behind Moses encouraged his men after before pillaging this village to kill the children and kill the men, but keep all the women. This includes the children as well, the female children. It says keep them for yourselves.
Women, children.
I don't see a positive story behind that. I understand reproduction, but this is cruelty in every sense of the word. I think people straight up ignore parts of their holy books. I think if you ignore parts, you can do one or two things. You aren't actually part of that religion, or you're just a non-active member.
I think there's a very interesting contrast between the way casual religious people interpret their religion and the way more intense religious people tend to interpret them. I think the common, the non-practicing type you spoke about before, is that what you used? Non-active, sorry. People who claim to be part of a religion but really have no real engagement with the texts, or, they don't go to church every Sunday.
Sorry, that is what I mean specifically. They don't have engagement with the text.
Yeah.
They pick and choose. It's not that they aren't active in the religion itself, but they just choose. And I think it is a massive cop-out. Like, I believe in Jesus and shit, but I'm not going to stone a gay.
See, it's tricky because I do feel like it's a cop-out, but I do feel like it is a much safer kind of religion to have, because unconsciously it allows you to bring and apply your own morals to the things you choose to believe.
That's the thing, exactly. They are a factor of social conditioning, as we all are.
Yeah.
They are a factor of society and their religion. And so I don't think it's fair that they pick things. I don't think it's fair on their religion, on their holy book, that they're picking things and ignoring things because of their own morality from society.
Yeah.
Your morality, if you are a Christian, if you are a Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're Hindi, your morality is supposed to be based on your holy book, not on society. So if you're picking and choosing from your holy book, how can you possibly say you are part of that religion?
Yeah.
Well, do you not think that they can have, they can believe what they think God would be proposing or like what Jesus stands for. Because the problem with
You're
the
not
Bible
allowed to in
is
holy books. In holy
Shut
books,
up.
you just
the
sorry.
problem with the Bible is that there's 2,000 years of stories that have been passed down and translated through Hebrew. And like, yes, it's possible that bad stories could have got in there and people could recognize these and not see them as part of their religion. And I don't see why that's a bad thing. I don't see why you have to follow this text that's 2,000 years old, translated through Hebrew, is a collection of stories from all over the place, and take the whole thing literally. You can look at it sort of analytically and take the good parts from it. I don't think that's necessarily a massive negative thing.
I think it's a positive thing. I agree. I think it's a positive thing, but I think that would make you a non-active person because you aren't true to your religion.
I think that is being true to your religion. For them, it's being true to God and Jesus and what they represent.
But do you not see, Tom, how that creates an element? It takes away the credibility of any standpoint they then choose to take. Because if you're able to start discrediting some parts of religious text from other religious texts based on your opinion or your social condition...
We assume they're true. We assume the religious texts are true, their God is true.
Yeah.
Because they have faith in it.
It
So
seems
if
to
you assume
me
it's true, then you can't.
you either have to take the whole lot or abandon the lot. To cherry pick is to say that some of these parts of these books are wrong, and you have no real justification to say which parts are apart from your social conditioning and morality.
I just want to interrupt here. I think it's very important. Obviously, I've said that I love spirituality, but I hate religion.
Yeah.
Specifically, religion with a single deity. I want to make it very clear that I don't hate religious people. I don't hate Muslims or Christianities. I think they're either ignorant or misled. Non-active ones, I have no opinion on because they aren't even true to their religions.
See, now, maybe there's an argument to be made that religion is, especially in the modern day, is more of a mechanism for justification for beliefs you already have. And that's why it can be useful in the sense that if you are properly morally aligned, based on, I don't know, what your culture or you as an individual or how you get to that point is irrelevant. But to be able to then point to something and say, this justifies my correct behaviour, again, takes you away from being in a position of doubt and, second guessing your morality all the time. And I think there's definitely a benefit in that if you're going to say, I want to be a good person who's kind to other people, and look, I found this passage here that says this is what I should be doing. Do you not think there's a value in that?
Well, that's my problem with it. I do think that's very valuable.
Yeah.
But again, they are picking and choosing what they like.
I don't think that's very valuable.
You don't think that's valuable?
I think they should be doing it a different way. Like, I don't think you should be... I think like you should read the Bible and or whatever, and then maybe take lessons from it and then apply that how you want. I think like the way you just said it, they're approaching it where they're like taking their moral values and then, like you say, just picking and choosing to like strengthen their values to themselves. They should already believe in it. I mean, they can maybe look for criticisms in the Bible on their values or something. But I don't know. I kind of feel that's like a backwards way of approaching the Bible.
But then
I think that's how most people do.
Yeah, I think so.
Because if you're going to do that, if you're going to be informed by the Bible without applying your morality to it, then you are at risk of taking on these terrible stories that are littered throughout all the Abrahamic religions. You need to have some sort of filter first, otherwise you end up with, well, extremism.
Yeah, you need a mixture of it all, I guess.
You mean active?
Yeah.
Active worship.
If we're going to take on Will's terminology here.
I think that's very fair. If you're not stoning gays, you're non-active.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Should we move away from this?
Yeah.
There was one more thing on religion I wanted to ask about, in that there's a very interesting trend throughout history in that all throughout the world, different religions all seem to have very interesting similarities with each other when there is no obvious or apparent line of communication between these cultures. Like there's almost always a dominant figure. There's almost always a sense of control. A lot of the time it's a man, patriarchy, feminism coming out here. And I'm wondering if you guys have any ideas on why that be, because that's a strong argument for a lot of people, that there is some sort of deity and that individual people are getting this same message seemingly out of thin air, and there is some sort of similarities between them.
I mean, I think you and me have very similar opinions. In my understanding of that, there's two reasons why. One is Chinese whispers. It's passed down person to person and it gets changed. For instance, Horus and Jesus, extremely similar stories, but Horus was a long time before Jesus. unfortunately, you can't trust anything from Rome. You can't trust any faith from Rome because they in order, it's very intelligent, in order to satisfy all the people they took control of, they started including their own cultures and faiths into their own. And so ancient Rome was probably, especially Christian Rome, just pre-Christian Rome, it's probably the most multicultural place that's ever existed.
Yeah.
So one is literally reusing a story, but the other is I think it's just been written down. That's it. It's just been remembered. You know, if it's literally, I mean, like, we know the stories. You know, we know this story and this story because they're identical.
Yeah.
You know, they're from completely different places on Earth, but we know them because they're identical. If they weren't identical, could you not argue that we just wouldn't hear of them?
Yeah.
Because it's not interesting then.
I think it's because they're the same stories. I'd go full Graham Hancock on this. I really like his side of things. He sort of believes that there were ancient civilizations around before now, and they were wiped out. One example is there's a period, I think it was about 14,000 years ago, where the whole of North America and the whole of Northern Europe was iced over completely by ice 3 miles thick. So it was a real big chunk of ice. And there's two theories on what happened, because we know there was a big flood around that time where the sea level rose by 30 feet overnight. And he thinks that could have been an example of where the story of like Noah's Ark has come from.
By overnight, is that literal or just
literally overnight? Yeah, 30 feet, literally. It'd wipe us out now almost. And they think there's either two ways that done it. It was either like an asteroid impact, or it was either slow melting of the ice in the middle that created a big pool, and then it came over at the side and then flooded. But we've got records of a big flooding at that time, and he thinks that it's very possible there were ancient civilizations around at the time. Catastrophic events happen, and then you just get few people that live, and the only people that would live would be like Amazonian jungle tribes, because they know how to like live off the land, so they've probably got a better idea. And then you'd get a few people that maybe live from civilizations who can merge with tribes and then build up civilizations again, and then they pass these stories down through ancient civilization to ancient civilization, and then that's sort of where we get religions and or some sort of religious texts from.
Are you able to just tell the listeners maybe somewhere they can hear that discussion, just because it is a very interesting...
Graham Hancock is the guy who talks about it mostly. He has a good podcast with Joe Rogan. He's on a few of them. One of them's with Graham Hancock and another guy called Randall Carlson. He's got some really interesting stuff, and he's got a book on it as well, like The Magician of the Gods or something like that.
Do you think it's fair to call Joe Rogan, since I assume he is the inspiration behind this podcast, do you think it's fair to call him Papa Rogan?
Papa Rogan. He's 50 as well. So
I would like to call him Papa Rogan.
Hi, Pappy.
Yeah,
Pappy Rogan.
I think he qualifies.
I mean, there's a very...
He's 50?
Yeah, he's 50.
There's a definitely very interesting theories. I don't know. Again, I would have to do a lot more research into how credible they are. I know they're not accepted by mainstream society at the moment.
No,
What doesn't he call himself, like an independent scholar?
Yeah.
Conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, more or less.
Independent scholar.
I think stuff like the pyramids being built a few thousand years ago by loads of slaves is a bit of a conspiracy theory, to be honest.
Yeah. They weren't slaves.
I don't believe
So,
that.
so who did it? Who did it?
We found evidence of them being paid and receiving dental
People
care.
still did it.
Yeah.
Just
with advanced
people thousands of
technology.
years ago. Maybe not necessarily advanced, but more advanced than we believe that they had.
So this is why we called Tom a tin foil hatter at the start of the season. It's definitely credible, but it does sound like a lot of bollocks.
There should be a pause whenever he says something like this. Should be a pause.
Yeah, like
I should
an
edit
eerie,
in. I
an
should
eerie
edit
silence.
in a little like a rustling noise.
Tumbleweed noise.
It's a smart idea, and if you go and listen to it, I think you'll start to.
Well, just because he's convincing doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, he backs it up well. He's got a couple of books written on it. They're good, but I mean, even just go listen to the podcast, you can get a pretty good idea of what he's about.
Scientology has books, mate.
You know, it's very possible that humans have been around for what 400,000 years with this brain size. It's kind of weird that there's such an explosion 5,000 years ago and nothing for the previous 395,000 years.
I do really like the mushrooms idea. What is his name? Is it Paul Sanders?
Oh yeah, he has it. He gets it from Terence McKenna. If it's the same one, where the mushrooms are what gave us our evolution.
Well, yeah, it definitely aided our brain development in the period of like 2,000 years. Our knowledge and our brains has completely changed.
Yeah. Well, so you think that? Or no, the mushroom idea is
the stoned monkey idea. I think is what he's talking about.
Yeah, and that's not. So you could turn it to like 5,000 years ago. then that's how we developed our brain.
I'm saying, not
Let's
that long.
just elaborate on what it is
Longer than that. I can't remember very well, but the idea was that we were developing and everything. We had tools and everything. I mean, apes now are seen making tools and performing rituals. We assume to be rituals, religious ones. But our brains, like they changed, like the way they worked, the programming improved, and they grew larger. I think the period was 2 something. I think it was 2000. It might have been 2 million, but I think it was 2000 years, and it was when we become planeswalkers, and it was just like 2000 years of eating. Was it mycilibin?
Yeah, psilocybin.
Psilocybin, which latent terms as magic mushrooms.
Yeah, which grows notoriously in animal feces, such as grazing animals, which would be in plains.
Yeah, and so this made our brains like completely change. You can research this kind of stuff on YouTube, and people talk about this kind of stuff all the time.
Mushrooms work on the limbic system of the brain, which is the language center of the brain. So the idea behind it is that mushrooms help develop our limbic system, which help develop language.
Well,
and then once we started communicating, we just excel
our
from
vocabulary,
there.
our language, and our brains. They like better vocabulary, better brain, better brain. It's an
more
upward
the emergence
spiral
of vocabulary, and then the big upward spiral from there. But yeah, so it's a good theory. I like it. There's other theories as well that we started eating bone marrow at the time, which is really dense in protein, and then that helped us sort of again double it. It was a doubling in brain size over a very short period. Or I think they might have been cooking meat as well. I think is the leading one. Cooking meat, bone marrow, and then tinfoil hat magic mushrooms.
I like the magic mushrooms just because Samet. I love Samet. Samet is like, he's not really a father figure. He's more of a man I would copulate with.
Wow.
I really like the guy. He is really convincing. Yeah. He does give out some really interesting statistics, some really interesting experiments. He makes sense. He isn't rhetorical at all. I can. It's a combination of respecting him, but also finding someone who is outright intelligent.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of people getting religious experiences from things like magic mushrooms or ayahuasca and stuff like that? Because it's very interesting how with DMT, for example, we can have trips and people can swear, that a lot of people swear by it, that they actually go to other places, have encounters with beings, and there's lots of people that, although you can have very unique DMT trips, you can also have points in DMT trips. I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before.
No, we haven't discussed this.
Cool. With like the acacia tree or something, and they have points, like if I say to you the McDonald's around the corner, they'll be able to say to you the pink lady under the acacia tree or something like that, and you can still have these similar standpoints even in DMT trips from like all over the universe. And even when they speak to people like tribes people that do ayahuasca and stuff like that, and they can still recognize the similarities of people like them to people in like developed countries.
I'd argue 2 things there. I'd argue it's coincidence, and I'd argue that hallucinations are just a product of our environment anyway. For instance, if you had 30 people get high off their tits and were hallucinating, and you put a dog in a room, they'd all recognise the dog,
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how they interpret the dog, but I think all of them would interpret the dog in either the same way, or would have an interpretation of the dog that you could follow and go, that was an interpretation of the dog. I don't believe it is. There is a sort of a third-party paranormal thing going on there. Saying that, I can't remember his first name, but yeah, Samet does discuss one of his journeys when he was a very young man, getting high off his tits on shrooms, and how he climbed this tree, how he experienced this rainstorm, and how he saw these dead cows. And a couple of weeks later, there's a massive rainstorm. Blah 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 blah. I would highly suggest you search that. Actually, he was on a Joe Rogan podcast. He's very intelligent. He's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good podcast.
See, now with things like that, I don't even know if you have to default to something spiritual, because it's not too far-fetched of an idea that because of the way we've evolved, we have innate knowledge or innate tendencies to do things. We know from birth we have certain behaviors that we just instinctually do, certain things we are, how would you say, immediately equipped to recognize, like how we do acquire language as children. That's not given to us, it's just within the brain. And the way that certain psychedelic drugs, especially like DMT, ayahuasca type stuff, would you say it redistributes the power in your brain? It causes focus in certain
I think
areas?
it improves. It
Honestly,
improves.
don't know.
I wouldn't say
Yeah.
it rewires. Most people would say it rewires, I guess.
Yeah.
But I would say it does improve the wiring in your brain.
Well, it was on the Vsauce video I watched recently. He does an ayahuasca trip, which, just to briefly talk about what that is it's a combination of two Amazonian plants, right? That all throughout, I think, Brazil or somewhere in
Brazil,
South
about
America,
50,000 years ago.
that's been used for rituals and the initiation of shamans and X, Y, and Z. And it's basically a very, very intense, very long psychedelic drug. And he goes through that, and they do various CT scans of his brain, and it redistributes and creates a higher level of efficiency in the way your brain powers itself and where the energy is distributed.
Pretty cool.
And it doesn't seem too far-fetched to me that in doing that, you're able to maybe access some of the default things you've got within your brain, or, the more traditional... for example, it was Jordan Peterson who spoke about it and how it pops up all the way through various religious texts and imagery, this idea of trees and of growth.
Yeah, the acacia tree.
Yeah, and how we fear snakes, and how all of these can be evolutionary biases that have been put into us because we used to live in trees. Obviously, in trees there are snakes, and snakes just pop out of nowhere and are terrifying. And how through various religious texts and through various psychedelic trips, people have imagery like this. It doesn't seem too far-fetched to me.
It is interesting how it's like in religions, it is widely accepted snakes as this sort of representation of evil.
Yeah.
I mean, easy one is the Bible and this snake in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Like that is really interesting. Actually.
This idea of creeping unknown danger that you can just stumble upon.
That is really interesting. I mean, trees is a pretty obvious one because trees are everything.
Yeah, to us anyway.
Trees are everything to us in the olden times. It was safety. It was houses, or it was used as houses, or it was used as warmth, or blah 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 blah. Long list of examples.
It's where you would run to in fear.
Yeah, trees are like probably the one thing that's been most useful to human beings throughout our history.
Yeah. So I think that's another alternative explanation for why there are these correlations between people's drug experiences and these kind of things. I don't necessarily think you need to go to spirituality for that.
There's another guy who's quite big on that. He does a program called Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Well, what title?
It's a Vice program, and he goes around and tests different psychedelic drugs and other different drugs. He also
Sounds right up your street.
It's a real burden. It's a real burden
yeah,
for him. Isn't it?
he's a very, very well qualified chemist or something. And he loves like tripping and stuff like that, but he's very much of the viewpoint that it's from the brain, and it's just like visions of the brain. It's all created from the brain.
Yeah.
He might be an interesting guy to look into to extend your views on that one. Yeah. All right.
Okay, well, we're just reaching the hour mark, so that has been our... I'm not entirely sure which...
Should we... I think we might as well go on longer. We've still got a couple of things to talk
Yeah, we'll have an extra long edition, Christmas edition.
Guys,
this
relax.
is for you guys. This is our Christmas gift to all 20 of you.
Right, so I think moving on from religion and religious experiences leads us definitely onto the freedom of religion, a right that we have in the UK and in America. The freedom of religion, I think...
particularly religious expression.
Yeah, religious expression. Yeah. I think we all agree it's perfectly fine, right? I mean...
It depends, really. It depends...
I don't like...
when it gets taken to an extreme.
I don't like... I can't remember which one's which. I think hijab's just the scarf. I have no problem with hijab. But I don't like
is
burqas.
the scarf, the burqa is the entire body covered.
I don't think people should hide their faces at all. I don't think people should wear balaclavas.
Will, you have a beard.
I do have a beard. But you can still see past the beard, and without the beard you can still recognise me.
Why can't you hide your face? You should be able to...
Freedom of anonymity. That was wrong.
I think in a public space, I don't think you do have the right to anonymity. For instance, in public space in the UK and America, you are allowed to film people. If they ask you no, you can completely ignore that. And you can carry on filming them. Yeah, you can film anyone in public space.
If you're on public space, yeah, I'm not too sure. But...
If it's private, nah, you're fucked. Yeah. Do what you're told, mate. Yeah. But I mean, if you're in private, you don't want your rights to be
violated,
they can just tell you to leave. You know, they get to a point where they can force you to leave.
Yeah.
So you're a fan of ban the burqa?
No, I think that's horrific.
Ban the public burqa.
I think in public, I think in public that you shouldn't hide your face with a balaclava or a burqa. And I'm sure there probably are people out there who think the same about beards. To be fair,
I don't think that's a rational standpoint. I mean, I think if you were going to say that, you would then have to apply that to all sorts of other things, like, hey, it's cold and you're on a bicycle, you can't have a little boy over your face, whatever they're called, like, you know, scarfy. You know how delivery drivers wear, like anything like that. You can't have a side fringe and a beard. You can't have. How dare you stand behind that wall with your eyes just slightly peeking over in public? Like, we can't see your face.
Well, the Asians always wear them.
Oh yeah, the cough masks.
That's the first time I've ever seen that. Like, you see it in news and stuff. Like, when you look at images of China and Japan, you see people with these sort of hospital masks on.
Well, it's 'cause
in Sheffield, it's the first time I've actually seen people walking around in England wearing them. I thought the way what I got taught in high school was like, oh yeah, they do it because of the pollution in the air.
Yeah,
I
just wouldn't want to breathe that fucking
But I'm
air,
also seeing people in Sheffield walking around with these hospital masks on.
I think it's like a disease thing as well. Like, if they have a cold, they put it on so they don't infect other people. I don't know if I made that up, but that would be a nice thing to do.
It is extremely useful.
Yeah. But then would that have to be banned as well?
I don't think people should hide their faces in public.
Why is that?
But I just think because people can do shit.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, if someone's wearing a headscarf, that's fine. You can still recognise their face.
Yeah.
If they're wearing a burqa, you can't recognise them at all when they take it off.
Yeah.
You know, if a dude has a beard and shaves, you can still recognise him.
Yeah.
If someone has a monobrow, a beard, and really dirty hair, commits a crime and shaves it all off,
I think
you
can make a very similar argument for what the pro-gun guys do in America, in that if someone's going to commit a crime, they're going to put a mask on anyway. In banning it, all you do is alienate the people who want to do it reasonably.
That's actually a really fair point.
Because they're like, hey, criminals are going to have guns anyway. Like, it's the same with criminals and covering their face.
I remember I had a friend. I had loads of friends in high school. Not now.
Oh, popular.
But no, I remember in high school, a friend of mine, he was Muslim, and he was telling me a story that happened in, I think it was Bradford or somewhere. And these guys... these gentlemen, shouldn't call them gentlemen, but these gentlemen, they like robbed a shop or something.
Yeah.
And then they ran off around the corner, put a hijab on, and onto a bus. And the only reason they got caught is because someone saw them put the hijab on.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
Cheeky hijab.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Religion expression, I think, is beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't think single deity religions are beautiful.
Yeah.
But religion expression is beautiful. But I mean, it doesn't cause problems.
Yeah.
I think people causing problems with people arguing against them, saying you shouldn't have them.
Yeah, I agree.
But they are,
even though you just took that stance.
They are, yeah, definitely. But they are a way that people can perhaps get away with things. You know. On the other end, I mean, I think some of them should be limited. For instance, no problem with a hijab. I have a problem with a burqa in a public space. But I remember a story quite a few years ago of this girl in France.
Yeah.
And she got in trouble in the school, and then her family got the school in trouble because she wasn't allowed to wear jewellery in school. And she had this bangle on, and she had a necklace on.
Yeah.
And apparently they were religious symbols to her.
Oh, okay. It
was she got forced to take them off.
Like a crucifix or something.
I don't know what they were, but she wasn't allowed jewellery in the school, and she said, well, you know, my human rights of expression, and the family tried suing and everything. I can't remember what the outcome was.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's my opinion that in terms of things like religious expression should sort of be viewed as in the same stead as any other kind of expression. Like, if it's not actively harming anybody in public spaces, I think it should be allowed. What
would you identify as harming someone?
I don't know. You wear a burqa covered in knives or something.
So physically,
or you have a burqa that says, like, no, not even a burqa, just a T-shirt that says, like, fuck black people or something like that. There's an argument to be made that you are actively causing harm to the people around you in some sense. It's a liberal argument, basically. I think there is a counter argument to be made in terms of private space, in that if you own a bar and it's your land, you maybe should be entitled to ban certain forms of expression because it's your territory and they have the right to leave at any point.
Yeah, I
mean, if
completely
you
agree
want
with
to not
that.
allow
If it's private.
a certain type of people into your bar or something, then you're a bit of a dickhead.
It's
but
distasteful,
I
but
guess you can do it.
It's your bar.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is actual discrimination.
Yeah, it is. It's a tricky one.
So saying sorry mate, not allowed burgers in my pub is fair enough, but saying sorry mate, not allowed Muslims in my pub.
Yeah, that's different.
But I mean, is it? Is it?
I think so.
Because the burqa is protected by human rights. It's protected by the freedom of religious expression.
Yeah, I think.
So is it fair saying not allowed burgers in my pub, but but it's not fine saying Muslims aren't?
Well, I mean, it's very. If you really wanted to be in that pub, you could take it off. I mean,
pubs are a bad example. Muslims shouldn't be in pubs anyway. It's part of their
they
religion.
don't drink, do they? Well, what about a lovely pub lunch? They can have those. Just no certain meats.
Name me a pub with a lovely pub lunch.
Yeah, true.
There's loads, mate. People go to pub lunches and don't drink. Just not us.
It's not
Just
worth
not
it,
us.
though. It's not worth it. It's so expensive and it's low quality.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go to a pub and not drink. Like, I would go to a pub.
Well, I think we're straying from the point a
if
little
there was
bit.
a pub meal and a drink.
Yeah. But no, I definitely feel like
Sponsored by the Beehive?
Yeah, sponsored by the Beehive. Please, Beehive, give us free points. We can't afford them anymore. We spend so much money. I definitely think, like with everybody's freedoms, they should be restricted as little as possible unless they actively are infringing on somebody else's freedoms or they are causing harm to somebody else, which is an infringement.
So that leads on to, I'm not sure if this is right or not, actually. If you can just do a quick Google search. I think it is. The right, I think it's the right of comfort. So you have the right not to be offended by people, and you have the right to feel comfortable. You have the right not to feel scared or afraid.
Yeah. I don't know if that's widely accepted. I think that's just some people trying to push for that.
That's fair enough then. So assuming that is true, and I haven't just made it up
It's an
somehow.
interesting discussion though.
Assuming that is true, would you not argue that a burqa could make people feel uncomfortable? Therefore, it's restricting their right of comfort.
If you subscribe to that right, yes, but I don't. I think that's stupid. It's my short answer.
Do you not think people have the right not to be afraid?
I think they have the right not to be afraid within reason. I think you see a black guy and you're just a racist person and you're afraid of them. That is not... You don't have the right to say, go away, black guy, because I'm afraid of black guys.
I can pop out some statistics there. I mean, in America, black men make up... I think black men make up... I can't remember what it was, but I know black people make up 16% of the population in America.
Yeah.
But they are convicted for 53% of violent crimes.
Yeah. See, now I would argue that's due to two things. Firstly, due to a biased police system in terms of how many people they prosecute, and secondly, because of the systematic and institutionalized racist
assuming whether or not that's
culture.
fair,
yeah.
To John Smith down the road, should he not be afraid of this black man wearing a hoodie?
No, I don't think so at all. I think that even though statistically wise, I don't think that means that the majority of black people are committing crimes. I think that the majority of people committed for crimes are black. That's not disputable.
If you don't know what the difference is, you just know half the crime in the country made up of black people, whereas less than a quarter are black. Yeah. Would you not be afraid of that?
See, now I think that falls into the unreasonable category. Like you said, if you don't know, if you're going to be afraid of people based on ignorance or lack of knowledge or prejudice, I think that falls into the unreasonable category. I think it's reasonable, although maybe not so much in America, if you see some guy with a balaclava on wielding an AK-47, that falls under reasonable because, he's active, he's concealed his identity, he's got a dangerous weapon. There's no reasonable explanation for it, like you're not a Comic-Con or the...
Right, so I can't remember what the statistic was. There was some statistic in London for being mugged. So let's just say it's 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 people get mugged, right?
Wow.
Obviously I can't imagine
that's for example,
true.
Yeah.
But we'll just assume 1 out of 10 people are getting mugged, and you see 9 people walk ahead of you, right? So you're like, ooh, I might get mugged here. Oh no, right? And you're walking down the middle of the road, right? On one side is a gentleman, a white bloke, wearing, I don't know, a fucking suit.
Okay.
And the other one is a gentleman who is black, wearing a hoodie and baggy trousers.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we have a couple of factors here. Some people would use ethnicity, and some people would use their clothing.
Yeah.
Representation of their class. Who would you? There's a car coming. So whose side would you stand on?
See, now this is tricky because we do all have innate biases like that, and I hate to have to say it, but I would walk on the side of the guy with the briefcase or the suit or whatever.
That's perfectly fine.
But, however, I don't think that. I think that's correct because
Let's assume now it's a white bloke and a black bloke, and they're both wearing the same clothes.
I think
Which side would you walk on?
I would not. It would be whichever's closest. I think.
They're both equal.
Don't know which side is the shop I'm going to.
You just walk in our sheet.
I honestly don't think that would factor into it.
I can fully say I'd go and walk on the white guy's side.
See, that's troubling. That's very troubling.
I don't think
that speaks of something institutional and cultural that is a problem.
Prejudice. I don't see a problem with prejudice.
Okay, now to relate it back to the topic we were talking about in terms of being able to restrict that person's
I think
freedom.
we have been on a tangent here.
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm going to make it relate. It's going to all come together. So, this black guy's walking on the other side of the street. Let's switch it up a bit and just for continuity, say it's a person in a hijab, and on the other side is an old white woman with a basket of kittens or whatever. Like, yeah, you might feel more intimidated by that person because there's an element of unknown. You're uncertain. Maybe there's some cultural influences that make you more wary of that person.
Scientifically, we're all programmed to be afraid of someone if we cannot see their face.
Yeah,
You
that's reasonable.
don't know how they feel.
Yeah.
Now let's make that.
Can I finish my point first?
No, you can't. I want to make that example more interesting.
Okay.
Right. So on this side is a Muslim bloke. He's maybe 50 years old. He's got a bit of a beard. He's got a nice little hat on. Right. He's got that formal dress on.
He's in his religious wear.
Yeah, he's off to mosque. And on this side is a woman off to mosque. She's wearing a full burqa.
Yeah.
Which side would you say?
The thing is, Will, we're straying from the point here in that we're talking about whether or not that should be restricted, and I think it shouldn't be restricted.
No, this is a point against my argument.
Can you complete it? I'm not following.
Well, I don't think people's faces should be hid. I don't think people's faces should be hidden in public. However, in this situation, I would stand on the woman's side because she's wearing a full burqa, and in Islam, women wear burqas. I'd assume that's a woman.
Okay.
And I go, well, the woman's less of a threat than a man is. Don't matter if they're Muslim, don't matter if they're white, don't matter if they're black. Don't matter who they are. I would find this woman less intimidating than a man.
Yeah.
So
again, we're talking about what is a reasonable threat, and now the offshoot of your example is now to say that men aren't allowed on the street if you have enough reason to be afraid.
That was just an argument. Cause, I'm not sure what your argument was. I didn't let you
finish
my point. But that was just an argument against my idea, against my.
I'm just saying that you've touched on something really interesting there, in that yes, certain people might make you feel uncomfortable or under threat for a variety of cultural reasons. Whether or not they're correct doesn't matter. You have the freedom to avoid that person. You have the freedom to cross the street. You have the freedom to, X, Y, and Z. You can go to the white part of the neighborhood. The answer is not to take those people out of society or to prevent them from doing what it is that makes them threatening.
Do you not think people should not be afraid?
Yes.
What if people are genuinely afraid of someone wearing a burqa because you can't see their face?
I don't think that's a legitimate fear. I think that is based on prejudice and racism, and to a degree.
It doesn't matter if it's valid or not.
It does matter if it's valid.
If I called you a homophobic word and you were insulted, you'd be insulted. It doesn't matter whether or not you feeling insulted is justified. You are insulted.
But you being insulted is not justification enough to force them not to do whatever it is insulting you.
Now that leads on to a question we're going to talk about later.
Thank God, let's segue away from this.
Do you have any views on religious expression, Thomas?
Haven't been listening.
That went down a very dangerous. I was trying to diffuse Will. Please, Will.
I want to do my own solo podcast. I think we should move on from religious expression because I think it's a very touchy subject, and I don't have enough notes in front of me. Yeah. So, leading on to rights of free speech.
Can you call someone a faggot?
I fully believe you can call someone a faggot.
Yeah. So there's a bit of context to this. I'll just set the scene in that this is something that's very close to Will and Tom's hearts.
I want to make something very clear again. We in no way, even though we do talk about Sheffield University in our description of our videos, we are not a representation of Sheffield University at all.
No.
Just to make that very clear.
This is entirely independent of university. Context. So Will and Tom, we're all part of a. Are you okay with me giving?
Yeah.
So Will and Tom
give them Thomas's address as well, so they can.
So Thomas Forster and William Attaway and I are all part of a course, generally more or less course-wide group chat on Facebook.
Yeah.
And without any malicious intent, or it wasn't directed negatively.
It was
towards
extremely
anybody.
clear. It was a joke.
It was a joke, and it was quote unquote banter. In one of them,
it wasn't even banter. It was just it's a common phrase people say to their mates.
Yeah. So one of them used the word faggot. They addressed someone as a faggot, in a light-hearted way. There was no malicious intent, and some of the people on the group chat took a great deal of offence to that and tried to set out guidelines that certain words wouldn't be used in the group chat.
I've been told was genuinely offended.
Yeah.
One person was defending people who were defended, even though we weren't aware these people to begin with. And the person who was actually dressed as faggot called us faggot back.
Yeah,
he was in on the joke. He was actually homosexual. He did say as well he's actually homosexual.
Okay. I don't think that should factor into it, but yeah.
I think it should.
Okay, well, either way, so what are your arguments against this? Because both of these two are very much against the idea that their speech should be limited in that sense.
I have 2 points for this, and as always, I assume Thomas agrees with me.
Tom's gone to sleep over it.
I'm waiting.
Okay.
So my first point is people shouldn't be insulted. It's fucking useless. Don't be insulted. People can learn not to be insulted. If you can learn, you should learn. If you could learn, if you could easily, within reason, learn how not to feel pain when someone punches you in the face, why would you not? And people punch you in the face on a regular basis. Why would you not learn that skill? You know, if you can learn and very easily, and I fully believe that you can, not to be insulted by someone. People insult people all the time. Why would you not learn to do that? People should not be insulted by words.
I think there's a difference when it's a direct insult and an indirect insult. Or it wouldn't even be an insult then. But, I mean, if it's like indirect like it was for me, I was saying the word faggot and then other people took offence just simply because I used that word. They've got a real deep emotional attachment to this word, and I just don't think I'm responsible for their emotions, and they kind of need to get a grip on it. If I was calling someone a faggot and I had some intent behind it and I was being mean to them, then I can kind of get where they're coming from. But I still don't think that that's a case to then ever say, oh, you shouldn't be using that word. Because if my intent is to offend them...
You shouldn't be trying to offend them at all.
Then it shouldn't be limited. I think there should always be healthy exchange between people, whether it's to insult people or whether it's to just be friendly to people. We need healthy exchanges because we learn and grow from it. If we start saying you can't say this because someone might get offended from it, it's like, well, if someone gets offended from it, then it will be, hey.
Oh, you're getting further from closer to the mic.
Does it sound really weird?
Yeah.
Just swinging around in his chair.
Come on, professionalism.
I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, I don't think people should get offended from it, no matter what I'm saying. I can't help but swing. But carry on. I can't remember what you're saying now.
No, that was another point I was going to make. People should not be insulted. And when you are insulted, you should only be insulted when someone's trying to insult you.
Yeah.
I think in the 21st century, our language has evolved to a point where words are completely interchangeable. I'm not going to say it in the podcast. I think it's quite a strong word actually. But the word, the C word,
cunt.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mum.
Nothing wrong with it. That's why.
But yeah, that is a very exchangeable word. That can be used same as faggot.
Yeah.
Same as gay end. The gay end is a favourite word by me. These words can be used as insults. But when they're used as insults, it doesn't matter what the word is. It matters that someone's trying to insult you. I strongly believe that's how far our society is moving. For instance, if someone shouted at me, "Come on then, you faggot, fucking hit me," I'd be like, "Fuck you, man." Why?
Because you can tell from the way it's been presented
exactly,
to you that
it doesn't matter what the insult is. What matters is the intention.
Yeah.
If he's trying to insult me, he's trying to insult me. It doesn't matter if what he says is true or not, he's trying to insult me. That leads me on to a point. I know I'm going to rant a bit here. That leads me to a point.
Very passionate about this subject.
I've thought this through because a friend of ours, I said in the chat that functional adults should not be insulted by anything, and then a friend of mine asked me to give out a formal argument for this. So I've thought about this a bit. Saying that, I can't remember what point it's going to be. I forgot now.
Okay. You can come back to that. I'm sure you'll remember in a moment. Do you not think that because of the way our language works and the way that the English language simply would cease to function if words, very specific words, didn't have specific intentions and meaning behind them? Do you not think that it is inherent to certain terms, either based on the word itself or the history behind those words, that it has become a key feature of that word to be offensive?
I definitely believe that's the way someone could be insulted by a word.
Yeah.
Because of what the word
means.
Not what the word means. The word's history. You know, the N word. Again, I'm not going to say it.
It's
I feel it's too strong for the podcast. But the N word has a very long history, and so I can understand a white man not saying the N word, and I can stand a black man being allowed to say the N word.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, the black men. The black people weren't slavers in the cross-Atlantic slave trade. They were in Africa, but not in the cross-Atlantic slave trade, which is where the N-word became popularized. Obviously, homosexuals and people of that sort, they faced a lot of struggles in recent history.
Yeah, and systematic oppression applied via terms like that.
I'm not going to say systematic oppression. I think that's just...
Maybe not systematic, but cultural.
Well, no, it's true, but using it, it's just a buzzword, so using it implies a lot.
It's a bit emotive, that's fair.
But yeah, they've definitely faced a lot of discrimination. They've faced a lot of hardships. And I do think that maybe that history does have an influence on the word. My problem is, this is a 20-year-old being assaulted. This 20-year-old has only faced discrimination, homophobia, in the 21st century.
Yeah.
So the history doesn't fucking matter.
You don't think that would then apply to, well, there are arguments against this, but say to black people in America now, where it's no longer, well, at least as institutionalized their oppression? If you're saying that someone born in America in the past 20 years is therefore no longer entitled to take offense by someone calling them the N-word?
Not entitled. I would never say they're not entitled, but they shouldn't be.
I think you're entitled to take offence, but you're not entitled to then say, because I'm taking offence, you shouldn't be saying this.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's
what gets me.
We are actually protected. So there is, as we've probably... again, if there is a right of comfort, then we aren't allowed to insult people. But if there isn't a right of comfort, we are allowed to insult people. Now, if there isn't a right of comfort, then freedom of free speech, which is a freedom of expression, you're allowed to say anything hateful. And the friend of ours who asked me to write out this standard argument, he strongly goes by, and this is, in my opinion, just another propaganda sentence from the far left, I would call them. Hate speech is not free speech. It's a very common slogan they use, and my response is yes, it is. Hate speech is free speech. You're allowed to say whatever you want, as long as you aren't inciting hatred, as long as you aren't saying you should hate these people as well, and as long as you aren't inciting violence, as long as you aren't saying you should hurt these people, then it's fine. If you're saying I hate these people, here's why, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Tom?
No, I think I kind of agree with that. If you want to express your hate,
I think you're a cunt, but you're allowed to. You're allowed to be.
And the reason I think it's okay is because there's healthy exchanges in it. While I don't think that person would necessarily be right in their behaviour, I think going through this exchange is going to be your lesson in learning whether your behaviour is right or not. If you're going to go around being a cunt, then you're probably going to get
banged.
People are going to treat you like a cunt, and then you might probably change your ways if it's just limited, or we start saying, this is hate speech, and he gets arrested or something. I don't think that's ever going to change him. If anything, it would make things worse.
Where can you draw the line? Because there is an internet community on the internet called otherkin. Now these people, I won't express an opinion on them. We've been on too many tangents. But these people, I don't identify as human beings. They identify as real animals, sometimes mythical animals. Sometimes they make up their own animals, and they don't identify as being a human being. Now, if you called them, a person, for instance, again, ignoring any arguments with gender issues, if you address someone, a person, instead of addressing them by a gender pronoun, if you just say this person over here, then this otherkin would be offended. Now, I would assume this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But again, we can make the same argument. Animals have faced a lot. If this person identifies as a cow, cows have faced a lot of hardships. There's still a genocide of cows now.
Yeah.
Well, not genocide. We're not trying to exterminate them. We're just making use of them. We're exploiting them.
Yeah.
We are categorically killing them because they are less than human. This person identifies cows. Would you not argue that this has an even worse history than the word faggot?
I do think that with that argument, you're missing an important distinction in that the term faggot or the N-word or X, Y, and Z, that is not a specifically descriptional term. It is a term that has been created or at least misapplied to be a slur and therefore to be an insult.
So it's cow?
Yeah.
Calling someone a cow is a slur?
Yeah, not in the same sense.
I'd argue it's the exact same.
You think
I can't
it's the
see a
same?
difference.
Let me think about that.
Well, I'm not specifically attacking you. I appreciate I appreciate the devil's advocate whether or not you agree. But that's the point I'm trying to make. People should not be insulted by a specific word. They should be insulted by an intention. Someone comes at me, calling me, effing and jeffing and calling me all this. Then I'm going to be insulted because they are trying to insult me. I'm like, well, this person wants to start something here.
Yeah.
This person is trying to upset me. If someone says, oh, well, it's just a fag. I'm like, yeah, cool, man, cool. It's a joke. They aren't saying, you are homosexual for this, I dislike you.
Yeah.
They're saying, oh, you're a bit of a fag, mate. If this person is coming at me and insulting me and saying, oh, I want to hit you, you're a faggot, you're a nonce, they aren't actually calling me a faggot or a nonce. They're just using these words. It doesn't matter if it's true or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the word carries. What matters is it's used.
And you don't think there is a negative aspect of using descriptive terms for certain groups of people as insults? You don't think there's any social repercussions of that?
I do believe there are social repercussions, but I believe that the actions should meet the action. I think no one should be punished, or there should be no retribution.
Yeah.
I don't think there should be retribution anyway. I think I've discussed this on the podcast. I'm not sure, but I don't think someone should be taught a lesson, I guess, by an action that is worse than their own. For instance, if you call your mate fag, if you organise a street and say, "Oh, Tom, you're such a faggot," and some random bloke comes up to me and punches me, it doesn't matter if he's been offended or not. That action does not meet the action.
Yeah.
Him calling me a slur would meet the action. That is all. The same friend of ours who I've mentioned a couple of times, he doesn't see a problem with punching someone who was racist. Like a year ago, maybe there was this example. There was this man. People dressed him as a neo-Nazi. He did hold some Nazi ideologies. He can't actually be a Nazi because they stopped accepting members. But so he can't actually be a Nazi. But it was going all across the internet. I'd punch a Nazi. And people putting on Facebook and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd punch a Nazi. I'd punch a Nazi. It's like, well, no, that's not fair. Firstly, this man can't be a Nazi. Secondly, it doesn't matter if he holds these ideologies. If he isn't actually inciting any violence or hatred toward these people, he's just saying what he thinks. He's saying, I think this person is less than a person for this reason. He doesn't deserve to get punched. You should meet him with the same action. You should be shouting. You should be interrupting him. Or maybe you shouldn't be interrupting. I don't know, but you should meet that with the same action.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's where a healthy exchange comes into it.
Definitely.
I sort of agree that you should meet an action with an action, but I also sort of agree that this is why there should be so much freedom to expression in that. I mean, if you are a Nazi on a corner and you are screaming hate speech at the top of your voice all day long, and you're going up to people and you're getting in their face.
Well, hate speech is inciting hatred.
You know, whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
you know, they're saying burn the Jews or something, and they're getting up in people's face, and he sees a Jew and he shouts with his hate at him. I don't see a problem with him hitting him, the same as I don't see a problem with that other guy expressing his views.
No, I agree.
Whether he's going to
That's
learn a
inciting
lesson
hatred.
through this or not, that's sort of what I'm getting at, and it's the freedom to have both exchanges.
I wouldn't punch the gentleman. I can't really call him a gentleman, but I wouldn't punch the man. But I wouldn't see a problem with someone else punching the man.
up to you.
Well, that's because he's inciting hatred or he's inciting violence. What, do you have
Oh, well,
something to
I
say
feel like
there?
we've segued a little bit from what we were talking about, and I think that's definitely an interesting
Oh,
conversation.
I think this is definitely a big
we
thing
can
on free
move back
speech.
to.
It's a very big topic to talk about.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
a
we should,
very broad
maybe
topic.
we should advocate it to its own. Is that the right word? Maybe
Separate
we should
it as
give
its
it
own,
its own
topic.
podcast.
But to go back on just to briefly summarise the previous one with the use of the term faggot in the group chat, I definitely agree that I think it's a self-writing problem in that you touched on it a little bit earlier, Tom, in that there are social repercussions for using generally unaccepted terms. Like, for example, if I walked around London using the N-word casually, eventually, because of the society and the generally held view that that's a negative thing, I would then suffer some sort of negative consequence for that.
You get a pasting.
You get a pasting.
Well,
It's for that reason.
I think the action should be the action.
Yeah, well, yes and no, but that's what would happen. I don't know if it would be a reasonable reason to get
Oh,
beaten up.
yeah.
But I think it's very dangerous for a society to start put it in writing and in law and to enforce the prevention of use of certain words, as you would agree with, because that's a very, very dangerous slippery slope to go down with the restriction. What do you call that? Like litigation, or like it's put into law, or put into some sort of doctrine that it can't be done. That's very dangerous. Yeah, because maybe this is an optimistic view, but I like to think that society itself is self-correcting in the sense that people who use these terms will be shown that they're unacceptable if it is unacceptable, and it's not necessarily to put it into litigation. I mean, I definitely think that with the word faggot, it is going through an evolution at the moment, and that the meaning is moving away from being an intrinsically bad and hateful thing to being more common parlance. I think that's just the way language evolves.
I think it's used
and it
far more
changes.
commonly than it is used to insult someone.
I agree. I know that there are strong arguments for why using it at the moment would be bad, and I can see why people would get offended for it.
I think this is my own political agenda, obviously, but I do think the far left is shouting and playing the flute far more than is necessary.
I agree. It's a big problem the far left has, is defending.
I mean, you're left yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as far left.
Well, no, but you can say, you do.
Well, sometimes I would.
You support some rallies. You do support some. Obviously, it doesn't matter who's holding the rally. It doesn't matter if it's feminism, Black Lives Matter. As long as what the rally is what's important.
Yeah.
You do support some of these rallies. I'm not sure if you've been to any.
Not yet. I'm waiting.
But you do support some of these thoughts. If I assume you don't mind, you aren't heterosexual yourself. I'm not fully heterosexual, I guess. Whatever that's supposed to mean.
Yeah.
But I mean, you do have sympathy for these people.
Yeah.
You do believe in some things they believe in, and I think it's very powerful that you can say, well, actually, no, you are taking this too far.
Yeah. I think it's definitely worth acknowledging for both of you that I'm not trying to lecture you here, but this is something you are out of touch with in terms of the weight of racial slurs and especially homophobic slurs. In that it's something you've both been very out of touch with your entire lives. In that sense, you've never been a racial minority. You don't know. You don't in this country.
Yeah, I've been a racial minority.
Where?
In primary school.
Okay, well, in terms of the whole society you're in, is sort of a main.
Yeah, my local community, I was a minority.
As in the country, the culture. Or okay, maybe you have. Maybe did they use racial slurs against you?
No.
I was a minority in Dubai. They used to spit at me in the street.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you are a bit more in touch with it. But you.
They used to spit at you.
Yeah.
That's a bit further than calling you a cracker, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has used that word in about 20 years. But yeah, I mean, it's important to acknowledge that you may not fully appreciate the level of offence that it can cause in somebody.
You are right.
It
I can't. But do you know why?
Mm.
Because I choose not to be insulted.
You haven't been in a situation in which you would be able to choose not to be insulted.
Yeah, I have, and I've just walked
Not
away.
not in a everyday.
I get where you're
occurrence.
coming from,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate your
I'm
point.
not saying your points are invalid.
Yeah.
No. You definitely do have a point there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think main thing is, like I said earlier, I don't think a functioning adult. I think a child, it's permissible
Yeah.
whether or not they start crying because someone called them a fag.
Mm.
But I don't think a functional adult, and many of the people in the chat would have prided themselves saying they're an adult.
Yeah.
I don't believe an adult should be offended by words.
So I'm wondering, then, in what situation is it appropriate to be offended?
If someone's trying to offend you.
You think that in no situation can something indirectly offend you? Like
It can.
like you see
I'm saying
on,
it shouldn't do.
You shouldn't do. So you see a broadcast on the television discussing about how all ginger-haired people are actually lower performers than everybody else, and they're therefore going to be removed from society, or they should
take
be.
like what Westboro Baptist Church do, and they walk around with their signs, saying God hates fags,
Yeah.
burn the fags.
It's not directed at you. They don't.
Offense from that.
I don't know if those guys probably do mean offence.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of like just seeing something on the street that isn't directed at you, but is very, very wrong in your opinion, is that not also a scenario in which you can legitimately be offended?
I don't believe so. No.
You don't believe so?
If the intention isn't there, like, for instance, if on the podcast we started discussing trans rights,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we should tackle that hurdle yet, but if we started discussing trans rights and, there was a transgendered person or a transsexual, in one of our viewers was one of those, and they got upset, I'd encourage them, and encourage anyone who's upset by anything now anyway, to leave a comment or to send me a private message.
Yeah.
I would encourage them to do that, and so I could discuss with them that it isn't our aim to insult people. And when we do tackle tricky subjects, I do put in our description.
Yeah.
We don't aim to offend anyone. We're just sharing some ideas. I don't believe you two are malicious in any way, and I know I'm not malicious in any way. I wouldn't punch a Nazi. I think that's a very malicious.
I want to talk about that after.
I think that's a very malicious thing to do. I can't remember my point. I was just virtue signaling there. Fuck it.
Also, just interestingly, I just wanted to quickly ask how this would relate to the previous point we spoke about in terms of you being
Shit, don't ask me how it's relevant.
and being offended or taking fear of people being in burqas and therefore having the right to ban them from it. Is that not what we've just discussed, a counter-argument against that?
That is a good example. That is a good example of when you're not trying to offend someone, but you could.
Yeah.
I would accept that I could offend them. And in this situation,
you could offend them.
I could offend. And in this situation, I still don't think they should be offended.
Yeah.
Because I think a critical-minded adult should not be offended.
Yeah.
An adult, full stop, my own definition of what an adult should be. I don't think an adult should be offended by that. But they should definitely fight for their right to do that.
Fight for the right.
I would fully encourage them to open... I would fully encourage them to open a dialogue with me and discuss these views with me,
Yeah, but you'd run away, wouldn't you?
Yeah, Will's already crossed the street.
Hey, you'd be legging it.
No, if someone came up to me in the street, I'd go, "You're right, mate."
But
if the guy in the burqa was coming up to you, you'd just walked the opposite side of the road and went, "Hey,
Excuse
from
me.
here!" Runs
If a
after
bloke,
you.
if I saw someone in a burqa
I'd leg
walking past me,
Yeah.
and they said, "Morning," I would be shocked, but I wouldn't be afraid. My own. I mean, I've lived around people with burqas all my life. I was raised with people in burqas around me.
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about it. In an example of someone wearing a burqa and someone not, I would choose someone not because I can see their face.
Yeah.
I know what they're feeling and their emotions and everything. I think logically they are safer. But my own feelings are I don't.
Yeah, you are entitled to this.
I don't see anything wrong with wearing the burqa. I just think it can be a problem. I think the biggest problem is people talking about it. I definitely think that people who are more bigoted than myself, people who have less reasoning behind their views.
It creates a mistrust, I think, in culture. That so many people, it's heard a lot around that these people aren't to be trusted, and that
exactly.
that creates that response that you
Yeah,
might
and
have.
people use that to throw away an argument. You know,
Yeah.
if someone in a burqa came up to you and started talking to you about women's rights, then someone would go, "You're wearing a burqa, you don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah,
you know, similar if I came up to someone and started talking about how people shouldn't be allowed to wear burqas in public space, someone would go, "Oh, you're a neckbeard, you don't know what you're talking about."
Shout out to Ashley. So to move on to another topic we discussed, are you happy to keep going?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to see how long we go.
It's good, man. I love talking about
I'm
religion.
having a good time. We're completely away from religion.
Mate, it's still in there, still in
Yeah.
my head, whirling around.
We'll relate it at the end somehow. I'll make some like spurious, loose connection.
Throw out some hate speech, get people on edge.
This is a discussion we had at the very start of the year. I think it was one of our very first pub discussions. This idea of when is it acceptable to physically prevent somebody from expressing their views and opinions. So the big example at the moment is there's I don't really like the term neo-Nazi, but modern far right, like crazy far right.
No, neo-Nazi is fine.
Neo-Nazi.
Neo-Nazi specifically addresses their ideologies.
Yeah.
Nazi is
Okay.
an actual member of a club.
So it's like a semantics thing, but
We could just take a real Nazi as an example, can't we?
let's use
There's
neo-Nazi,
very few Nazis around. Like I said, they stopped accepting members quite a while ago.
So it's the example of, you see them at rallies sometimes and all these kind of people. Hell, you could apply it to the BNP guys. They do a lot of this kind of stuff.
And again, I want to make it very clear that personally, I don't think you should throw away someone's argument because of whatever label we've given them.
I agree.
It doesn't matter if the label is relevant or not. You know, you can call me a neckbeard. I don't think I am a neckbeard, but you can call me a neckbeard. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. You shouldn't use that to throw away an argument. Same with someone who identifies as a Nazi, someone who has a swastika tattooed on their forehead.
Yeah.
I would still listen to them. I think I don't even think that's a respectful thing to do. I don't think that's a courteous thing to do. I think that's the thing you should do.
Yeah.
As a critically thinking, as a functioning adult, you should be able to listen to people's opposing views to your own.
Yeah, I agree. So there are, to summarise, there are a lot of these people, they get on a soapbox and they preach their hateful views, basically.
Yeah.
And it's at what point, if ever, because there's a big movement again in the far left, this Punch a Nazi Club, that Antifa is a big one, actually. As to
leave that to its own podcast.
Who knows? We'll see how we go. We can go on all night if we want. We can split this into two if we wanted to, part one and part two, where they deliberately and generally with violence will stop these people talking or their rallies.
I'd argue feminism and Black Lives Matter do the same, but go on.
Okay. Oh, Jesus. We'll move away from that. They will actively, physically, and quite often violently prevent these people from talking. And as a libertarian, it's a bit of a dilemma for me because I very much respect your right to expression and your right to not be physically harmed by anybody. But also there is a compelling intuition that doing something like that is right. And I'm wondering what your guys' opinions are on that.
Now,
And Will, you've already touched on this, Will. That you're anti the physical prevention of these people.
you see, morally, if someone's inciting hatred or inciting violence, and I want to make very clear, if someone is saying you should hate these people, and this is why, and if someone's saying you should hurt these people, and here's why. I mean physically, not emotional. I'm not some books. That's
Why
bullshit.
you should,
I think being emotionally insulted is bullshit, you know. But I think if they're saying you should hurt these people, you should hate these people, I think morally you are not correct, but I think morally it's permissible to shut these people down. Now,
in what sense?
By grabbing the microphone or giving them, not giving them a punch. I think a sucker punch is a very dishonourable thing. So I think you're a massive pussy if you do that. Emphasis on the P. But if someone has a microphone and they're saying we should kill all the Jews, guys, let's fuck them all. Let's fuck them all to what's Mr. Garson's thing? Fuck them all to death. I think.
South Park.
I think if you want to fuck them all to death, then I think someone has a right to walk up to me and go, "Look, mate, you shut up, because if you don't, I'm going to hit you." Then giving them that nice little notice, I think that's a courteous thing to do. Stops you from being an utter coward. But I think morally that's fine. However, legally, it is entirely in their right. As far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, to do that, to not be assaulted.
Yeah.
If someone now morally,
Let's focus on morally. I think legal shouldn't interest us.
Morally, if someone has a microphone on a soapbox and they actually have a permit for a rally,
yeah,
I think if they have a permit to do that, you are no longer within your rights, and morally, it is an evil thing to restrict them from doing that.
Yeah,
because they've specifically gone to the local authorities, which is supposed to be representation of the community.
Yeah.
And or society, whatever you want to, again, semantics. But if they've gone to them and they've got a permit to express their views in this public space, then you are entirely without rights, without moral permissibility, I don't know, to hit them or to limit them.
To shut that down, yeah.
And, you know, so if a gentleman identified as a Nazi or a neo-Nazi, and if he did get a permit and a microphone and started telling everyone you should hate Jews, here's why you should hate Jews, I think we should start stringing them up.
Yeah.
I'd go, whether or not it's moral, whether or not it's legally right, I don't know, but morally I'd go, yeah, go on then, do that, mate. But I would also argue it's feminists or Black Lives Matter activists or whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what their gender is. They've gone through the proper legal
channels.
system. And if you get a permit, you specifically get, and you're very controversial for you specifically get a police escort. And I think that alone should be evident to you that they are entirely within their rights and therefore morally permissible to express these views.
Do you not think there's a utilitarian argument for this in terms of damage control? In that if you have someone who is actively inciting violence in other people, that one act of violence to prevent this person is therefore, in terms of the end equation, a better evil situation than the alternative, in which to allow them to continue to incite people and then them to go on to cause greater harm to people.
I don't believe so. I don't believe you are within your rights to meet their own verbal aggression and incitement of violence.
Yeah.
With actual physical violence. In modern day England. Now, if this was, between the wars, if this was hyperinflation Nazi Germany, I'd go, pre-Nazi Germany, I'd go, do you know what? You're within your rights to punch Hitler in the fucking jaw.
Yeah.
But specifically, not because we know what he's going to do, but specifically because of the situation the country was in at that point. The state that the people were in, you know? In our country, even, obviously you can argue about oppression and whatever, but everyone, even oppressed or non-oppressed, everyone in our country right now has a long list of rights that are protected. And we do have I don't care if you get if someone shouts faggot at you every day or if you get catcalled every day. You have no rights because of the luxury you do live with, because of the state our country is in, because of this. That you have the rights to punch this man. That is morally permissible to punch this man.
So I'm just confused a little bit in your distinction between what is morally right and what is legally right.
Now,
because I think legally we can just say, well, the laws are wrong. We want to focus on what is ethical.
A lot of my moral philosophy comes from what I believe to be absolute morality, as well as our rights. Specifically because a right is defined as a moral and lawful privilege. Not privilege, but you know what I mean. This action or this freedom is protected because of the law and because of your moral status. That is the dictionary definition, and I fully agree with that. I think if I have the right to expression, I've been given this right because of the law, but I deserve this right as a human being.
No, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think there's a very... Yes, we have a lot of laws that are designed to protect our rights and to prevent infringements of those rights, but I think those are in place because of the innate fact that we have those rights in the first place.
That is what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying. I'm saying morally we have these rights. and legally these rights are protected. That's what makes up a right.
Yeah.
You know, if you have to have these two qualities for it to be a right. And so when I talk about right, I always mean morally. Sometimes I mean lawfully.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about the situation, Tom?
I don't know, I've been thinking about like your little utilitarian argument on whether we can hit this
Oh,
guy
I'm sorry I didn't address that. Go
or
on.
not. I'm really finding it difficult whether we can or can't. I think it kind of depends on where they're sort of displaying their attitudes as well. I feel like if they're kind of doing it in like a town centre, very public, lots of people walking by, I get why they want to do that. It's a large audience. I don't think I see anything wrong with them expressing their views despite what it is. Although, I mean, if you really offend someone, you may deal with the repercussions of it. I'm not too sure how I feel about hitting him. I feel like if a guy stands up in a public place, like a restaurant or something, where you're having a meal and starts delivering these sort of things, I think there's more reason to, like, have violence to stop that action. But I don't know if I feel the same about someone standing in a public place. And I like what you said, where, you know, there could be people listening to him, there could be young people or just people that, you know, are still open to these views, and they might take on the views that we consider wrong. Yeah. But then I would also point back to what you said about like society correcting itself, and even if they choose to then accept these views and preach to themselves further down the line, it would probably correct and they would feel the repercussions. But I kind of like that people can express themselves in public places and not get hit. Yeah. If they, however, step down from like their podium and actually start trying to engage people one-on-one and then delivering their hate towards people. So if they're inciting hate on like a Jewish community or something, and they see a Jew and start pointing him out and saying you, and then actually addressing someone, then I think I see more of a position for that person to like shut him down however he wants. But apart from that, I kind of think it's okay.
Morally, in that situation, I completely agree. What I was getting at earlier, I do apologise for not addressing your view, but what I was getting at is our lives are so easy to the extent, I wouldn't say they were easy and not, I would say they're easy, but I'd say they're easy enough to the point where our society fixes itself. For instance, if you have a racist guy shouting on a podium, here's a permit, and you're saying the Jews should die, I'm going, fair enough, mate, you do that. And if this child over here is completely brainwashed by that, I go, fair enough, that child's completely brainwashed by that. Because I know this child socially will receive not punishment, but reconditioning. You know, now if this was Nazi Germany, pre-Nazi Germany, then their state was in such a dire situation that people are more accepting of more extreme views because they need an answer.
We have so many tools to research now as well. It's like, even if someone's saying this stuff, it's very easy, even if it's a kid, to
I can't excuse
search things up.
I can't excuse it. I can't excuse it, but I can understand why they'll feel that way.
It's easy, but that doesn't necessarily mean people will do that. People can be very easily convinced to believe a lot of things.
I think people will.
And especially, I mean, it's obviously nowhere near as Nazi Germany, but recently we've had a lot of turmoil in our country, and we've definitely got more coming with the EU and everything. And hell, you just have to see the way the spike in hate crimes in the UK after the EU. It's very easy for people to feel validated in their prejudices and therefore feel entitled to act on them. And I think in cases like this, with a person there trying to validate feelings people may already have and incite them to action and making them feel justified to do that, is a very morally complicated and difficult thing. Because, again, talking about the way our society corrects itself, it's difficult to decide how much of an active role you can take in that and how much you can try to influence society to move in a certain way. As a member of it, like I'm sure all of us, as well, I wouldn't say, I don't know what you guys identify as, but if we suddenly saw a big resurgence of sorry?
Identify as a cow.
No, if okay, Will Cowkin.
I'm a gender-neutral unicorn.
If we saw like
we'll avoid those kind of subjects for now.
If we saw a big resurgence in neo-Nazism, I'm sure you would be alongside me in the counter protests. It's just illegitimate, but it's difficult to justify.
I wouldn't.
Okay, maybe you wouldn't. That's worrying. Well, actually, maybe it's not, because if a society is moving away from opinions you hold dear, are you entitled to try and influence that to move it back to your
Definitely.
ideals?
You are entitled, yeah.
You are entitled. And
I
to
guess
what
so.
extent?
I wouldn't say it's morally right, but I would argue you are entitled.
Yeah. In what sense then?
I'd say you're allowed to. I'd say you're allowed to defend your opinion.
And
now,
how
morally,
violently? How extensively?
morally, I don't know if your opinion is
Not
right,
violently.
but violently, if you can make the argument that your action meets an action,
Yeah.
then I think yes. Again, but I think
But you
the
don't-
wider society is very influential on this.
Yeah.
You know, my action does not meet the action of young Hitler in the pub. You know, my
Yeah.
action doesn't meet his action.
So how do you feel?
But in his that society, it would.
How do you feel if somebody attacked someone else, and then to meet that action, somebody else at a later stage in time then attacked that person?
Entirely impermissible. I think that's why we have the law. We specifically have the law because social justice is only justified to an extent. Someone's a racist prick, and they're saying we should kill the Jews. Then by all means they're going to get a punch.
Yeah.
But if the person who punched them at a later date is going to get punched because of revenge, I think that's entirely impermissible. That's the reason we have a law. That's the reason we have laws. We have laws to stop revenge
Would that
because
not be an
people should not be
action meeting an
entitled to
action?
that. Sorry?
Is that not an action meeting an action?
No.
I think that falls back into the discussion we had last podcast about punishment, in that would be a backwards looking sort of punishment. You could only do that if you thought it was reasonable to believe that they would go on to do it again.
I don't think any kind of punishment is an action meeting an action.
It's not a punishment, is it? I mean, like,
It's revenge.
yeah, it is. It's revenge, but I mean, it wouldn't necessarily have to be the same person hitting him. It's like this social correcting thing. It's like
Yeah.
a repercussion for their action. If somebody attacked your mate for being of a certain race or something, and then you later on saw that somebody and then battered him, is that a bad thing?
I think that's morally bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Would you? How would you feel if, I don't know, Matthew, you're of Asian heritage,
Yeah.
if somebody attacked Matthew and then you saw that guy later on?
If Matthew was being attacked by that guy, I'd help Matthew.
Yeah, but you
But if it
wasn't
was
there.
At the time.
if it was at a later date, then I would attack the man. But I do not think it's morally right. I would
It's
attack the man.
emotive.
I would attack the man specifically because I'm angry. We come in passion.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could use as evidence against that maybe. But I would. It's a crime of passion, but it's still not morally okay at all. The man does not deserve to be beaten for that. He deserves to be. No one deserves to be punished for anything.
Do you think he deserves to be punished for that?
No.
So he should get away with that?
No.
What?
I'm confused.
He should be reconditioned.
He should be reconditioned. He should be rehabilitated. I think reconditioning,
we're
reconditioning
falling-
sounds more
yeah,
like
but I mean-
brainwashing.
Yeah, we're
I think
falling
he
back
should-
onto the same
he should be
arguments we did last
rehabilitated,
week.
Okay.
Sorry, Matthew.
So I just wanted to
apologise
pose a
for
question.
letting this man beat on you.
I just wanted to pose you a question, Will, in that you said you think there are absolute morals and certain things are correct and certain things are wrong. Now, if you saw your society moving in a way that infringed on those rights of its people, or maybe a subgroup of its people, and the only alternative to do that would be violent response, do you not feel that that is entitled because of the prevention of the infringements of these innate rights that we've got?
Entirely, yeah.
Yeah.
But my absolute morality is very personal to me, so maybe it's not so
Right,
absolute.
yeah, it's not absolute.
But I believe one absolute morality is we should inflict the least amount of cruelty possible.
Yeah.
Now, if there was a group of people who wanted to commit specifically a cruelty, defined to be a cruelty,
Yeah.
onto another population, I would defend the victim
Yeah.
in that situation.
But then at what point does that violent prevention or retaliation take place? After the fact or before? Before their atrocities have been committed?
During and after.
During and after?
During and after. I think beforehand, I think you should try and avoid the situation, but I don't think you should avoid the situation
Yeah.
by meeting a possible outcome, a possible action.
Yeah.
You should only meet the action at the time.
I mean, I agree that certain steps should be taken before, in terms things that don't violate their rights, in terms of like rational discourse, discussion, these kinds of things that aren't as overtly awful as physically attacking them. But I'm sure there are situations.
Beautiful eyes, mate. Go on.
What are we talking about?
Go look into your eyes.
Okay, I'll direct this to you, Will. I've lost my point.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Will, what are you doing,
It sounded
man?
good.
What are you doing? Okay, well, I think we're getting tired of this now. So
I'm not. I'm cool. Are you guys cool?
I'll call it. We'll rehash some of these arguments in another podcast.
I think we should probably conclude. We should
views on
conclude because
them.
I think we definitely went on a tangent there.
yeah,
I think.
no, I don't think that was.
I think you should meet an action with an
Yeah.
action, similar to our punishment discussion in the last podcast.
Yeah.
You should only meet an action with an action. I think meeting an action, a possible action, is you can't justify it. If someone's on a pedestal with a permit and goes, we should beat the Jews.
Yeah.
Then I think, no, it's entirely within their rights, and morally I think they're entirely okay to do that. If they are in a pub and shouting, we should beat all the Jews, then I wouldn't beat them, but I think it's morally permissible for someone else to give them a punch.
Yeah.
If they're on their way to start beating some Jews, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm picking Jews out.
It's the example we've used.
Hitler's the easiest example,
Yeah.
you know. But if they're on their way to beat some Jews and they go, hey guys, want to beat some Jews, then I would personally, whether or not I'd be too cowardly to do, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I would want to give them a punch. And while they're beating the Jews, I would definitely join in and beat the people beating the Jews. And in that situation, depending on the impact on society, depends on whether or not I'll meet the action afterwards.
Yeah.
I would not seek revenge, I would seek prevention, you know? Easy example is sort of like a rebel alliance in the country, you know, it's been overthrown or whatever. Like, you know, try and protect the people and believe what you believed before this happened.
So you've just said something that was interesting. You said you should be favouring prevention. And in some senses, well, in a lot of senses, violence is a very effective means of prevention. And if it's reasonable enough to assume that the course of action that it would take without you using violent prevention methods would be significantly greater than the damage caused by the violent prevention, it's a difficult question as to whether or not you're morally permitted to make that act.
The problem is it's extremely hard to measure how probable their actions are going to be.
Yeah.
If they go, right, we'll have to beat some Jews, I'm going to give them a punch.
That's the time. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're lying or not. What matters is I think they'll have to beat some Jews, so I'm going to give them a punch. If they're in a pedestal saying we should beat some Jews, then I'm like, well, fuck you, you can say that. But if the country was in an extreme state, people are more open to extreme ideas, and they're saying we should beat some Jews, I'm going to stand up there and punch them.
Yeah.
In that situation, I would accept my punishment and I would accept my prison time or whatever, because I think in that prevention, that example of what we should feel like justifies it. I would argue that our country is definitely not even close to that extreme state as pre-Nazi Germany. They were in a fucked up state, and so it was entirely justifiable for someone to punch young Hitler.
Yeah. So it seems like it would have to be an equation of potential outcome, likelihood of outcome, and the relation between the damage you want to cause against the potential damage.
It's extremely hard to evaluate. It's extremely hard to evaluate probability at the end of it all.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our Christmassy podcast.
Merry Christmas.
As we
Maybe Yule, maybe Hanukkah.
Yeah, and all these other things. I'm sure the far left has created a fair few lovely little holidays.
Jesus
I'd like to thank Jesus
for this Christmas period.
I'd like to thank Jesus because, let's be fair, do not like Christianity. Hate Christianity, in fact.
But love Christmas.
Jesus is alright. To be fair, Jesus is alright.
Yeah, what fella?
The worst thing Jesus did, Jesus was extremely open-minded, extremely tolerant, as far as I'm aware. So he sounds alright.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the podcast. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to try and upload every Wednesday now, but we'll be away a little while for Christmas, so bear with us until we're back.
A couple of weeks off now, and then we've got guests and stuff coming on soon, so you don't have to listen to our unintellectual conversation.
William's constant rhetorics about religion.
And interruptions.
We're going to hopefully get a couple of professors on, PhD students on, talk to them about what they're currently working on, and I think it'll be
keep to philosophy
really
rather
good.
than politics.
Yeah, and then we'll do a few guests here and there, and then we'll actually have time to think up topics and get a little bit more well informed and discuss it. And then I don't know. Then we'll mix in some casual ones like this as well, and then I think we'll have a good
little balance.
Philosophy podcast.
I think we should do it bi-weekly. Guest is spouting shit.
Yeah.
Guest is spouting shit.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, so we'll get back to you on that. Thank you very much for tuning in on YouTube.
I was Will.
I was Matthew.
And I'm Tom.
And Will interrupted me again. Thank you.
Please like, subscribe, and share, and all that jazz.
Yeah, tell us to your friends and your gran. Thank you. Bye. Is it still recording? Stop.